Forget about your drummer. By the end of this video, you'll be able to program killer sounding MIDI drum tracks in no time. Let's go! This video will be a one-stop shop for you, so everything will be listed in the description. You have two options, one free and one paid. And all the links will be there for you to simply click and install to get you started. Starting with the requirements, you'll need a decent computer. It doesn't have to be brand new or super powerful, but it would help if you have something up to date because some plugins require newer OS versions to be able to run. Then after getting a decent computer, you'll need only three things. First, a DAW or digital audio workstation. In my case, I'm using the latest version of Steinberg Cubase, but there are several free options out there. The second thing you're gonna need is gonna be a sampler engine. So some plugins, they can run standalone. Some others, they require a Kontakt engine to be able to run. The third thing that you're gonna need is either an electronic drum set, a MIDI controller like this, or if you don't have, you can simply use the virtual keyboard inside your DAW. If you don't have any of these, you can simply go in your editor and program drums with your mouse. There's really no problem with that. So the first step is to try to establish what kind of sound you're looking for. I'm a huge fan, for example, of the Chris Lord-Alge Rock Kit here, even in metal productions. For example, you select that, you go in grooves, and then you select a basic groove. So let's go in pop straight, hi-hat closed, and you select the groove. So grooves are essentially a performance that was captured in MIDI, and it's very easy to start getting inspired or get a quick workflow if you have a riff idea. So you simply go in the groove section of the plugin and you can drag and drop in your MIDI track. So here you have a visual representation of your MIDI groove. So each line will be a piece of your drum set. So in this case, you're gonna have hi-hats here, you're gonna have cymbals there, and you're gonna have kick and snare up here. You can see here it says low timbale. Right now we haven't assigned a drum map to our drum kit. So that's one very important part of the job because each drum sampler will work with a different type of mapping. So you will have to spend some time to make sure that the MIDI drum map that's here is working with the MIDI drum map that's inside your drum sampler. And if not, you're gonna have to reassign the notes and make sure that the right piece of the drum set is associated with the right MIDI note inside your software. In this case, we're still working with the default general MIDI drum map. So most of the time, kick and snare will work. Some of the pieces will also work, but not everything will work. For example, cymbal chokes and other fancy things like that. So the second important thing to talk about is routing. So in the first example here, I was simply using a stereo track, left and right. Running in multiple outputs here, you're gonna be able to mix your drum kit as if it were a real acoustic one. So that's where things get really interesting. And that's also how you can get a lot of flexibility in routing. For example, here as you can see, I have each of my channels. So 3 kicks here, kick in, kick out, snare top, bottom. Again, I'm running multiple layers with multiple snares at the same time. All my toms here, hats, ride, mono drum room, and after that I'm routing this in sub buses. So I have my kick bus, snare bus, toms bus, all my ambience mics like overheads and rooms, and then I'm running this in parallel, so parallel compression, parallel distortion here, and then reverb, and all that is going to my main drum kit bus. So that's how you can really get things to the next level in terms of sound. But if you simply want to program beats and get going into working pre-production, you don't need to go fancy. So how to create a multiple output virtual drum set? First thing you're gonna need to do is add a new stereo instrument track or MIDI track, depending on your DAW. Add track. Next thing you're gonna want is to load a drum kit. So in this case, I'm gonna load Chris Lord-Alge CLA Rock Kit 1, double click here. As you can see, the samples are loading. So right now, if I go in grooves, what you're gonna hear is a simple stereo kit. So after you loaded your samples, next thing you're gonna want to do is go to the mix tab. So the default setting is everything to one stereo track. As you can see, at the bottom of each track here, we see output one stereo selected. So what you're going to want to do is go to routing presets and click to everything in its own stereo. So if you look here at the bottom of each track, now we switched 1, stereo 2, stereo 3, stereo 4. So now all the kicks are routed to one stereo track. All the snares are routed to another stereo track. So the next thing you're going to want to do is click here and go on the left side here in your SSD5 sampler. And you're going to want to select all the outputs that you need. So let's see right now, we have outputs 2 to 12. So we're going to select each one here, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. So now we just activated all the outputs. We just click right underneath here. It's going to vary depending on the DAW you're using, but basically here all our tracks are appearing, and we're going to see if we're playing this groove, you're going to hear everything coming through their separate stereo channel. Overheads, and then we're going to loop. This is going to be overheads, room. Let's see toms. So in this case, all the toms were routed to their separate stereo track. So you can see here how much more flexibility you're going to have compared to simply having everything routed to one stereo track. So once you're there, you can already send all this stuff to buses, for example, for parallel compression, for reverb separately, and having really much more control over what you're doing. What's really cool working with virtual drum sets is the fact that you have entire control over bleed of each piece of the drum kit. So traditionally, if the drummer was hitting the hi-hats, for example, really hard, it would bleed over all the other microphones. But in this case, you really have control and you can tweak that. So you can go to the mix window here and have full control over the bleed of each piece of the drum set over other microphones, for example, overheads, room mics. So for example, if you find that your snare drums are not loud enough on your room mics, you can simply increase. So I would go right here in room or room B and increase the volume. So this is the type of thing you would never be able to do with a regular acoustic drum set once it's been captured. So the really amazing feature with virtual drum sets is that you can stack sounds effortlessly. Basically have two snare drums playing at the same time. So let's listen to this basic CLA rock kit. Sounds pretty good already, but I think it could have a bit more snap. So let's go to Create, Instruments, and let's stack the snare drum with another sample right there. So right now they're stacked, and then you can go to the Mix tab and start tweaking. Basic CLA snare, and the extra sample on top of that. So I can have this really beefy sounding snare as my main snare, and on top of that I can stack this tight ringy snare drum to get some more sustain. So this can really help you build a killer sounding drum set. After having finished the design of your kit, the next thing you're going to want to do is to work on your drum map. So you're going to have to make sure that here the notes are matching with the lines in your drum map. In this case, I built this drum kit from scratch, choosing the best samples and also stacking. So I think I'm working with 3 snares plus a few one-shot samples on snare drums and 2 kick drums. Let's listen to it. So if you pay close attention here, you're going to see that this is far from your average general MIDI drum map. I had to assign a bunch of things, and it took quite a while to make sure that everything worked seamlessly. So for example, every cymbal here has its choke next to it. It makes it very easy for me. For example, crash, and choke. So if you want to emulate a real drummer, you're going to have to be able to have all these articulations really handy. So this is going to make a big difference in how you're building all your beats. So here on the left, you're going to have the MIDI note, and then in the center is the instrument associated to that MIDI note. And it has to reflect what's been programmed here in your map. So sometimes it can take a while to assign everything and to make sure it works. Okay, and sometimes there may be conflicts. For example, here you see there's a conflict that was left. So two different sounds are associated with the C3 notes. So this may cause problems. So I will need to fix that. And then you need to save it here to make sure that you don't lose it, because the time it takes to build that is considerable. So you want to make sure that you don't have to do it every time. So let's go see here, take a quick glance at the kit. So here I'm using 1, 2, 3, 4 kick drums at the same time, and snare drums 1, 2, 3, 4 as well. So each of them has a specific role. For example, one is going to get more body, one is going to get more sustain, one is going to get, for example, more impact. So for example, a dry sound, very punchy, that I'm going to clip, that's going to really make the snare stand out. So each sample is playing a specific role. So in this case, the kick in is going to be the clicky part of the kick drum, the thump is going to be more the body, and the kick out is going to be a bit more of sustain, of roundness. Same thing with snare drum. I'm going to have something with a lot of transient information, something with more body, and then something, for example, with more sustain. And blending those three together is going to really create powerful sound. One thing very important with stacking samples is the more you stack, the more you're going to have to pay attention to phase relationship. So in this case, I can see that I flip the phase on this kick drum. Let's see how it sounds like. Let's see if I reverse the phase. Can you see how much bottom end I'm losing right now? So if you're working with multiple outputs, one thing that's very important is to have each separate piece of your drum kit on a separate track. And after you're done programming your track, render in wave. So that way you're going to be absolutely certain of everything, and you're going to have a visual representation of your waveforms, and you can see if there are phase problems zooming in your waveforms. Programming 101, so now that you're all set up in your DAW, the next thing you're going to want to do is program those beats. So obviously you can drag and drop grooves from within your drum sampler to your MIDI track, but this doesn't give you a lot of flexibility. What you're going to want to do is start programming stuff by yourself. One really good option without having to buy an electronic drum set would be to get a MIDI controller like that. The reason why is that this is velocity sensitive, so you can basically hit from quiet to loud notes just with your fingers. So that's pretty convenient. If you don't want to spend on that or get an electronic drum set to capture the performance in MIDI, you can also use a virtual keyboard. So for example, in Cubase, you can press Option and K to have access to an on-screen keyboard. And from here, you can still play beats with your fingers. The thing is, you won't have the velocity being recorded. It's only going to be a note at maximum velocity. So let's say you don't want to have to deal with an electronic drum set or purchase a MIDI controller. You can simply get the pencil tool, and this will get the job done really quick, and you can get started in no time. So you simply go to your drum editor here. Let's select here the grid in 8 notes, put kick drums, snare on 2 and 4, and let's put hats on quarter notes. I think that having a basic knowledge of how to program drums can really help you structure your ideas, and that way when you exchange track between band members, you're going to have a clearer picture of what you had in mind in the first place for your riff or for your line. So that's very important to learn for any musician out there. Here are my 5 most important tips regarding MIDI drum programming for your musical project. Number 1, make sure you spend a good amount of time exploring different libraries and choosing the sound that's right for your project. Number 2, don't be afraid to stack drum samples. For example, using 3 snare drums at the same time. But if you're stacking those samples, make sure that they have a good phase relationship between each other. Number 3, a lot of drum samplers out there have built-in processing, effects, and routing. If you want quick results, that's good, but for maximum flexibility, I highly recommend you use multiple output and you treat your drums as if you would be treating acoustic drums. Number 4, when you're done programming your tracks in MIDI, always print to audio for processing. That way, the DAW won't play tricks on you with delay compensation or potential problems like that, because that way you're going to have a visual representation of each track and you can really see if there's a problem with phase alignment. Number 5, if you want to send your drum tracks for mixing, make sure that you send them in 3 different formats. First one should be the original MIDI performance, in case the mixer wants to go back and change some parts. Number 2, you should send them in multiple outputs printed in audio with no effects. And number 3 should be a stereo print with effects to give an idea of what type of sound you had in your head. Here's a list of common mistakes why you're not getting good results programming MIDI drums. First thing is that you're not using the full scale of velocity. So from 1 to 127, make sure that you're playing around those dynamics. If the drum set has no dynamics, obviously it's going to sound robotic. Number 2, if you're stacking sounds and you're using one-shot samples, for example, for your snare drum, make sure that they're not too loud in the overall balance of your drum kit. The reason why is that one-shot samples, they always are the same sound in different volumes. They do not change in terms of velocity. So for example, when you're playing on a real drum kit, the harder you hit your shell, the more the whole shell will vibrate. So in this case, one-shot sample will be the same exact sound but just louder. So it won't follow the natural expression of your drum kit. So this will make your drum kit sound sterile and really static. So don't rely on them too much if you're building a virtual drum kit. Number 3, don't be always locked on the grid. If you want to inject feel in your parts, make sure that you're a little bit in the pocket and that you're working not only the dynamics in terms of velocity, but also the positioning. So you can rework each hit. And for example, inside Cubase, you have this humanize feature which randomly moves some hits around. So this will actually re-inject life into static parts that were simply programmed right on the grid. Number 4, make sure you work the articulations. So drummers will usually play ghost notes. Sometimes also when they're going to play double bass drum, one leg is going to be slightly weaker. So try to emulate those human features, and that way you're going to get a much more natural sounding performance. Another tip is to try to picture yourself as if you would be playing the part. For example, I see sometimes MIDI parts with 3 cymbals at the same time. Humans only have 2 arms, so it may look a bit dumb, but some things are overlooked. So be realistic in the way you're programming your parts. Finally, a poor choice of samples or stacking too many samples won't necessarily help your cause. It's better that you choose a simpler drum set that sounds good than trying to add and add and add and potentially cause phase relationship issues, and in the end your drum kit may sound worse than if you would have picked just a simple drum set. I hope that you found the content helpful. If you had any issues along the way trying to get set up, let me know in the comments below and I'll try to answer as soon as possible. Please click like, subscribe and hit that notification bell, and see you very soon.